Naomi Reed's camera captured 3 things that night: a man on his knees, a gun to his head, and the face of the killer. She didn't realize her mistake until the next morning when he walked into her office. Kang Min-ho. Tailored suit, cold eyes. He locked the conference room door and said, "The Jade Serpents saw your camera. They're coming for you tonight. You have 2 choices. Come with me now, or I'll be photographing your funeral tomorrow." She looked at this beautiful, deadly stranger and realized something terrifying. She believed him. Naomi grabbed her bag. She'd just put her life in the hands of a murderer, and somehow it felt safer than staying. Before we go deeper, hit that like button, subscribe, and tell me in the comments. Would you trust a stranger who looks dangerous but sounds honest? Now, let's rewind. 12 hours earlier, Naomi was wandering through Hongdae with her camera, chasing neon lights and late-night stories. She was exhausted after a brutal week at the agency and needed something real, something unscripted. The streets smelled like street food and rain on hot pavement, and she felt alive behind her lens. She ducked into an alley for a better angle of a neon sign flickering above a bar. She was adjusting her focus when she heard footsteps. Not the relaxed kind, the frantic kind. A man stumbling, breathless. "Help, please." She froze. 3 men dragged him deeper into the alley. Naomi's instinct was to back away, but her journalist side betrayed her. She lifted her camera. A single click, then another. Her pulse pounded as she zoomed in. A gun glinted under the alley light. The victim fell to his knees. One of the men, calm, collected, stepped forward, raised the weapon, and the gunshot echoed through her bones. Her finger froze on the shutter, but she'd already captured it. The shooter's face turning toward her lens at the exact moment the muzzle flashed. His expression wasn't angry. It wasn't startled. It was cold and just calculating, like he had already seen her before she saw him. Naomi didn't breathe until she was 5 blocks away and sprinting toward the train station. She didn't stop shaking even when she got home and locked her door twice. She tried to sleep, but every time she closed her eyes, she heard the gunshot, saw the face. By morning, she convinced herself she could forget it, bury it, pretend it was just another dangerous night in the city. She grabbed her laptop, her camera, her coffee, and went to work like nothing had happened. But from the moment she stepped into the international news agency, something felt off. People were moving too fast, security guards scanning ID badges more aggressively. She tried to ignore it, heading straight to the photography department. She plugged in her SD card, telling herself she wasn't going to look. She wasn't, but her hand moved anyway, clicking open the folder. There it was, the man on his knees. The gun, the shooter, his face. She whispered, "What have I done?" Then she heard it, footsteps behind her, firm, confident, too controlled to belong to anyone in her office. She turned, and her heartbeat stalled. Tall, sharp suit, dark hair, eyes like winter. The face from her camera. Not the shooter. Worse. The one she saw standing behind the shooter in a later frame. The one giving the order. She hadn't realized last night, but now, seeing him in full light, he was breathtaking and terrifying. He didn't look at the computer. He looked only at her. "Naomi Reed?" Her throat dried. "Who are you?" He didn't answer. He stepped past her, closed the blinds, locked the office door, then gently, too gently, took her elbow and guided her into an empty conference room. "Sit." She didn't. "I said sit." Something in his voice bypassed fear and hit obedience. She sat. He locked the conference room door and leaned against it like a silent threat. "Let's skip the polite introductions," he said. "The Jade Serpents saw your camera last night. They identified your custom strap on street footage. They know your name. They know where you live. A tremor ran through her. I don't understand. His gaze flicked to the bag at her feet. You carry that camera everywhere. You didn't think someone would notice. Your strap is distinctive, red leather, handmade. They traced it within hours. Her breathing hitched. So what do they want? He leaned closer, his shadow swallowing her. Your photos, every copy, every backup, and then they want you dead. Her legs weakened. You're lying. His voice didn't rise, but the intensity made her shiver. I don't lie to people I'm trying to protect. Protect? She laughed shakily. You? Protecting me? You're, what, some kind of gangster? Hitman? Not a hitman. His eyes locked onto hers. Worse. Her stomach twisted. What do you want from me? She whispered. He exhaled softly, almost annoyed. Nothing. I want to know whether you want to walk out of this building alive. That sounds like a threat. It's a warning. He stepped closer, lowering his voice until she felt the heat of it against her ear. The Jade Serpents don't take prisoners, Miss Reed. They'll torture you for the files, kill your family, burn your body, and make sure no one ever finds you. Her hands shook violently now. So why are you here? Because you saw something you shouldn't have, and because it happened in my territory. His tone sharpened. That execution was a message to me. They crossed into my district. That means your survival is now my responsibility. Your responsibility? She echoed. There's a difference, he said, eyes unreadable, between ownership and obligation. She swallowed hard. So what do I do? Choose. Choose what? He stepped back, giving her space for the first time. Come with me now and live, or stay here and die tonight. The room spun. Her chest tightened. She looked at him, this man whose existence radiated danger, whose presence stole the air from her lungs. And instead of running, she whispered, I don't even know you. You know enough. His voice was soft, deadly, honest. Something inside her clicked. Not logic, not safety, instinct. She grabbed her bag. He held the door open with a small, knowing nod. Smart choice. As she stepped out, their eyes met. And for a moment, just a moment, there was a spark, a pull. Something neither of them understood yet. And that was the beginning of everything. Naomi followed Min-ho through the lobby, trying not to look terrified as he guided her with a light but firm touch on her back. He didn't rush. He didn't look over his shoulder. He walked like a man who owned the ground beneath him. But Naomi's eyes were everywhere. She saw two men in black caps scanning faces, another by the security desk pretending to scroll on his phone. Her throat tightened. They're here, she whispered. I told you not to look, he murmured. You expect me to ignore the people trying to kill me? I expect you to survive. There's a difference. That phrase again. She almost snapped at him, but the elevator doors opened, and before she could speak, he steered her inside. The moment they were enclosed, she exhaled shakily. His reflection beside hers looked too calm. Hands in pockets, shoulders relaxed, eyes sharp and unreadable. She hated that her pulse quickened whenever he looked at her. The elevator doors slid open to an underground parking lot where a sleek black car waited. A man stepped out and bowed slightly. Boss? Naomi blinked. Boss? Of what? Min-ho opened the back door. Get in. As the car pulled into traffic, Naomi hugged her camera bag to her chest. You still haven't answered the question, she said. Why me? Why drag me into this? Because you're already in it, he replied. You just didn't know. That night, what I saw, it wasn't random, His jaw tightened. A Jade Serpent execution on my territory? No, Miss Reed. That was intentional. A challenge. A message. She stared at him. So I'm what? A casualty of gang politics? Your leverage. His voice softened almost imperceptibly. And I don't like being leveraged. The car fell silent for a moment. Naomi studied him. The precise lines of his suit, the veins on his hands, the scar just below his jaw she hadn't noticed earlier. Everything about him said danger. Everything about him said power. But something else was there too. Something unsettling. She looked away quickly. So I'm jumping from the frying pan into the fire? She muttered. He smirked. More like from a bonfire into a controlled burn. I'm many things, Miss Reed, but wasteful isn't one of them. That's supposed to comfort me? You're still breathing. With the serpents, you wouldn't be. She rolled her eyes. Wow. Your bedside manner must be incredible. I don't tend to keep people in my bed long enough to practice. The boldness, the directness, her cheeks warmed despite herself. She shot back. Arrogance won't make you more likable. He looked at her, amused. You're negotiating. I'm a journalist. It's literally my job. His smile widened just enough to reveal a dimple she did not want to notice. This will be interesting. The spark between them crackled silently, sharp, and unexpected. Naomi looked out the window to break it, but she felt him watching her for several seconds before he finally looked away. The car glided into an underground garage beneath a towering building. No signage, no numbers, just polished concrete and silence. The elevator opened directly into his penthouse. Naomi's breath caught. It was stunning. Floor-to-ceiling glass walls that overlooked the city, marble floors, minimal furniture, and an expensive emptiness that felt lonely. Min-ho walked ahead without fanfare, hands in pockets, like he lived in spaces bigger than most people's dreams. She followed him down a hallway lined with subtle security cameras. He opened a door. This is your room. The door locks from the inside. Windows don't open. You're welcome to try, but it's 40 floors down. Why mention the windows at all? She muttered. So you don't get creative ideas, he replied dryly. My room is down the hall. Do not wander at night. My security team has itchy trigger fingers. Romantic. Self-preservation, he corrected. There's a difference. She dropped her bag onto the bed and exhaled, finally letting herself feel the panic, sitting heavy in her chest. Her whole life had shifted in less than an hour. Min-ho lingered in the doorway, watching her. Why are you looking at me like that? She asked, unable to hide the shaking in her voice. Because most people cry by now. Well, I'm not most people. So I've noticed. The way he said it, quiet, almost appreciative, made heat flare low in her stomach. She cleared her throat, desperate to break the tension. I need to see the photos. He stepped inside, closing the distance between them. You're not going to like what you find. I already don't like any of this. Still, she opened her laptop with trembling hands and inserted the SD card. And there it was. The execution. The gun. The face of the killer. The men behind him. His voice came from right behind her, barely above a breath. They saw the camera. They tracked your strap. They know you're a foreign photographer. They will come for you. She swallowed a sob. Why didn't I just run? Why did I even take the picture? Because it's your instinct, he said. You see something wrong, you capture it. You expose it. She turned to him, eyes burning. Are you actually complimenting me? A slow smile curved his lips. Don't let it get to your head. Their eyes held again, longer this time, charged. Something about him felt like gravity, pulling her in. She hated it. She hated that she didn't want to look away. Finally, she forced herself to speak. I need rules. He blinked slowly. Rules? Yes. I'm not just going to sit here and be your whatever this is. Prisoner, he teased. Don't push me. That made him laugh softly. Deep, warm, unexpected. The sound shocked her. It felt human. All right, he said. Let's establish terms. You stay alive. You stay quiet. And you stay where I can protect you. And in return? In return, he said, stepping closer again. I don't let the serpents carve your name into a gravestone. Her breath hitched. That's not a deal, she whispered. No, he agreed. It's survival. She stared at him, pulse racing. You're infuriating. I've been told. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The silence stretched like a thread pulled too tight. He finally turned to leave. Lock the door. Why? Because if someone comes through that hallway before I do, he said quietly, I need to know you have a fighting chance. He walked away, leaving her shaken in a way she didn't understand. She locked the door. She shouldn't have, but it made her heart beat a little easier. Hours passed. Night settled over the penthouse like a held breath. Naomi paced her room, unable to sleep, replaying the fear, the danger, and the way he looked at her. A soft knock broke the silence. Naomi? His voice was low, careful. You're safe. I'm just checking the feed. She pressed her forehead against the door. Why are you really doing this? A long pause. Because the serpents don't take prisoners, he said finally. And because you looked at me like I wasn't a monster. Not yet. Her heart twisted. Good night, Miss Reed. Good night, she whispered back. Neither of them slept. Naomi tried to rest, but morning sunlight found her awake and wired. Her door was unlocked now. Someone from his team must have checked it at dawn. Voices drifted from the kitchen. She stepped out cautiously and found Min-ho at the island counter, sleeves rolled up, tie loosened, staring at a tablet. He looked exhausted and unfairly gorgeous. He didn't look up when he said, You're staring. I'm observing, she said irritably. There's a difference. And what have you observed? That you take your coffee black with 2 sugars, she said, nodding toward the mug beside him. Which feels like a contradiction. Like you. He finally lifted his gaze. Explain. You project a bitter exterior, she said, leaning on the counter. But there's something sweeter underneath. Maybe you pretend to be cold because you're actually... Careful, Miss Reed, he murmured, eyes narrowing. I might think you're trying to figure me out. I'm a journalist. It's literally my job. His lips curved, slow and dangerous. Is that what you tell yourself? Her chest tightened. The pull between them was ridiculous, like something in the room thickened whenever he looked at her too long. She turned away quickly to pour tea, pretending not to see the smirk he hid behind his cup. Later that afternoon, he told her to dress. We're going out. Her stomach dropped. Out, as in outside? Where the people who want to kill me live? I'm keeping you close. As bait? She shot back. As leverage, he corrected. There's a difference. You keep saying that. I'm starting to think you just want the last word. And I'm starting to think you like arguing with me. It beats the alternative of liking you. He stepped in close, invading her space with deliberate slowness. And if you did? She refused to move. Then I'd have terrible judgment. He dropped his voice. You're here, aren't you? She opened her mouth to answer but couldn't. Because he was right. In the worst, most confusing way, she trusted him. The meeting with the Jade Serpents was brief but terrifying. They didn't attack. Too public, too many eyes. but their stares burned into her skin. One man even smirked at her, like he already knew how her story ended. When they were safely back in the car, Naomi exhaled shakily. "You're taking me with you? To meet the people who want to kill me? They won't strike if they think I have something they need. So I'm what? A human shield? Your leverage. There's a difference." "Oh my God," she groaned. "You are insufferable. And you talk too much when you're scared." She glared at him, stung. "I am not scared." He tilted his head, studying her too deeply. "You're shaking." She hadn't realized until he said it. She folded her arms tightly. "Fine. Maybe I'm scared. Happy." "No," he said quietly. "Not even close." For the rest of the ride, he kept stealing glances at her. Protective, almost gentle ones. She hated how they made her feel. That night she tried to sleep. She couldn't. The serpent's eyes, the threats, the possibility of death lingered too vividly. She paced her room until she heard footsteps. A soft knock. "Naomi." His voice. She opened the door a crack. He stood there in dark slacks and a half-buttoned shirt, hair slightly tousled from running his hands through it. "It's 2 a.m, she said, more breathless than she intended. "Security spotted serpent scouts near the building," he said. "I'm checking the rooms myself." Her chest tightened. "Are we in danger?" "Always." He walked past her into the room, scanning corners, windows, shadows. "But tonight, more than usual." "I'm not your prisoner," she snapped suddenly, tension spilling over. He turned slowly. "No, you're my responsibility." "I swear," she burst out. "If you say there's a difference." The corner of his mouth lifted, but only faintly. "I won't. Not tonight." He checked the window latch one more time, then stepped closer. Much closer. "You want to go outside? You want freedom? I get it." His voice softened. "But I can't let you die." Her breath caught. "Stop pretending this is altruistic. You need me alive for the photos." "And you think this is only about the photos?" he said, taking a step closer. She backed up until the wall touched her spine. What else would it be? His hands slid into his pockets, jaw tight. "Maybe I don't want you to die. Maybe that's allowed." She wanted to hit him. She wanted to kiss him. She didn't know which urge was stronger. "You're impossible," she whispered. He stepped forward, finally dropping the last layer of restraint. "So are you." Their bodies were inches apart now, breaths mingling. "Why do you look at me like that?" she asked. "Like what?" "Like you're trying not to touch me." His throat moved with a swallow. "Because if I touch you, Naomi, I won't stop." Her pulse slammed against her ribs. "You don't even like me." "Lie," he whispered. Her heart tripped. "You're angry because you're starting to feel safe here," he said. "And you hate that it's with me." "That's not. When I found you today, shaking in that alley, I wanted—" He cut himself off, voice breaking. "I don't want to want this, but I do." Her breath hitched. "You don't know what I feel." "Don't I?" His eyes dropped to her lips. She should have pushed him away. She didn't. She grabbed his collar and kissed him first. It was fierce, desperate, weeks of tension, fear, and attraction, detonating at once. His arms went around her instantly, one hand fisting gently in her hair, the other gripping her waist like he needed her to stay standing. Her body melted into his, hungry for warmth, for control, for something real in all this chaos. He kissed her like he'd been starving, like he'd been holding himself back, and finally broke. She gasped against his mouth. "Min-ho!" He pulled her closer. "Say you don't want this. Say it, and I'll stop." She couldn't. She didn't. But the moment she realized how much she wanted him, Fear punched through her chest. She shoved him back, breathing hard. Her voice cracked. That was a mistake. He exhaled sharply, chest rising and falling. Then why do you look like you want to make it again? Get out, she whispered. He hesitated, just a heartbeat. Then he walked to the door, opened it, and looked back once. This isn't over. When he left, Naomi sat on the bed, shaking, furious at herself, furious at him, furious at the universe for throwing her into the arms of a man she should fear. She wrote in her journal until the sun rose. I kissed him, and God help me. I wanted more. What am I doing? What is he doing to me? The bombing changed everything in a single breath. Naomi was at the penthouse when Min-ho's voice cut through the quiet. Clipped, controlled. Business front, explosion, people. The intercom went dead. Then the door burst open and his men moved like knives through the hall. He arrived 20 minutes later with blood on his shirt that wasn't his, eyes hollow in a way that did not suit him. They were employees, he said slowly, pouring whiskey with hands that weren't steady. 2 dead, 3 critical. Naomi felt the air leave her. They worked for you. They did. He set the glass down hard. The Serpents wanted to send a message. They did. You're going to retaliate, she said, because it was the only thing that could hold the jagged edges of the world together. Yes, he said flatly. And I will not lose more people. She wanted to argue morality. She wanted to believe another option existed. Instead, she thought of the man in the alley, the gun, and the way the city seemed to be built on a brittle bed of violence. Min-ho, she whispered, promise me you won't go too far. He looked up as if he'd been pulled from a calculation. Too far where? My enemy's graves. She flinched. Don't be flippant. He crossed the room and sat beside her on the couch, close enough that their knees touched. I promised you survival, Naomi, not virtue. She hated the truth. She hated how right he sounded. Then he surprised her, softer than before. If you're looking for a hero, you're in the wrong place. She met his eyes. I know who you are. He didn't answer with a joke. He let the silence say what he could not. For a moment, the world narrowed to the two of them, ruin around them, and the ember of something dangerous and warm between them. Their first real kiss came out of that quiet. It wasn't the reckless, angry press of lips from before. This one was slow and necessary, a soft collapse into relief. He kissed her like a man who had been holding his breath for too long, like he needed it to prove she was real and still there. Naomi returned with something molten and honest, and for one small period the violence paused its drumbeat. Afterward they sat close, breathing. I'm not a hero, he said again, quieter now. I know who you are, she repeated, and this time his lips brushed hers, and the world didn't seem quite so fractured. The next day they met his uncle. Dae-sung's office was an exercise in calm, a library of old leather and slow, practiced smiles. He greeted Naomi with a polite, clinical warmth, the sort that measured people like assets. So, you're the photographer my nephew has been distracted by, Dae-sung said, studying Naomi, as though selecting tea. I'm the journalist who witnessed a murder, Naomi said bluntly, refusing to be flattened by his charm. Min-ho watched them both, the set of his jaw tense. Dae-sung poured tea as if nothing could be a problem that a plump porcelain pot couldn't soothe. Delightful, Dae-sung said, smiling, but liabilities, however delightful, must be managed. Min-ho's hand tightened on the cup. He looked to Naomi then, something like apology in his features. Family matters, he said, and Naomi heard the edge. It was a sentence that meant more than politeness allowed. Later, walking her out, Dae-sung's voice leaned low, casual. People like you are useful for a while, Miss Reed, but in time they become inconvenient. We have to consider the long-term stability. This city, the business, my bloodline. Min-ho's face was something she'd never seen. Fierce and small at once. Don't speak like that. Dae-sung's smile widened. I'm not saying anything you don't understand, nephew. Just be practical. Those thinly veiled words landed like a warning. Watch the people close. Control the narrative. Remove the risk. They drove away under a sky the color of wet iron. Naomi watched Min-ho's jaw work as he processed the conversation. He didn't say anything until they were inside the car. He'd like you gone, he said finally. But family is family. Naomi's stomach dropped. You didn't tell me he said he wanted me managed. He didn't say those words aloud, Min-ho said, but his meaning was the same. He's consolidating power. He won't hesitate. She wanted to laugh and then scream. How many times did betrayal wear the face of someone smiling? A week later, the convoy left before dawn for the supposed safe house Dae-sung had recommended. The van rolled through rain-blurred streets and into a roadblock that didn't look random. The men who stepped out were not strangers, but faces Naomi recognized. Two of Min-ho's guards she'd waved at when she first arrived. Hands grabbed. The hood came down. They threw her into a cold concrete cell and ripped the SD card from her bag with no ceremony. The interrogations were surgical, questions asked with the patience of men who knew the cost of mistakes. They beat her where it would leave bruises, but not kill. They wanted passwords. They wanted locations. Above all, they wanted to know where every copy of those photos lived. Naomi lived in that kind of pressure. She gave them false passwords, named decoy drop points, and watched for cycles. She hid a small safety blade in her boot and waited. Outside, in the corridor, she heard men speaking. One guard said, Dae-sung wants it cleaned. No trace. The other spat. What about the nephew? He's compromised. Dae-sung told us to finish the files and finish him. Her blood ran cold. They'd been lying to Min-ho. Or Dae-sung had lied, had used family to bring the nephew down. She used the hairpin to pick her bonds when the guard dozed. She moved with the quiet, concentrated precision of someone who had survived. Worse. A shift change came. Doors clanged. A firefight began like a bad winter. Clear the west corridor, a voice barked. Min-ho's voice. Her heart lurched. She shoved the door open into chaos and found him in the middle of it, wild and controlled, teeth clenched, leading a handful of men who were unquestionably loyal to him. He didn't look at the carnage. He looked for her. When he saw her, something sharp and relieved and broken opened in him. You disobeyed, he said, as if rebuke could heal the sudden rawness in his throat. She spat, blood and adrenaline making her words harsh. I'm not a damsel in distress. He grabbed her, pulled her into his chest, and his voice was both stern and raw. I thought I said stay put. The world narrowed to the pressure of him, his hands steadying her, his heartbeat thudding like a second pulse. Around them the building burned, and people shouted, and lives rearranged themselves into a different truth. When the smoke cleared, and they were tucked into a safe room, he held her like he'd never let go. His fingers were gentle as he traced the cuts along her arms, and when she laughed, broken and incredulous, he said, voice low and devastated, God, I thought I'd lost you. She looked at him, furious and grateful and raw. You came. I came, he answered, and the confession dropped from him like weight. Then, almost impossibly softer, I love you. For a second, the room stopped. Naomi's breath hitched. She stared at him, trying to catch the truth in his gaze. It was there, fierce, uncalculated, and absolute. She started, but words felt ridiculous. He kissed her then, harder than before, not in anger, but in a claim that had nothing to do with ownership and everything to do with need. It was a kiss that stitched wounds shut for a moment, a desperate reclamation. Later, as they lay in the thin quiet of the safe house, Min-ho was careful in a way that frightened her with its tenderness. He pressed kisses to her bruises as if offering apologies with his lips. She found herself returning, not out of weakness, but because she wanted to be the person who could calm him when storms rose. "You could have died," he said at one point. "So could you," she replied. He met her then, eyes haunted. "When I thought I'd lost you, You don't have to say it," she murmured. He did anyway. "I love you," he said again, as if naming it made it steadier. "I don't know why I do, but I do." She laughed, a damp, incredulous sound. "You know I'm inconvenient. You make me want inconvenient things," he said, kissing her like prayer. They fell asleep tangled in each other, the city beyond the safe house a smear of lights and danger. For the first time since the execution, the two of them let themselves imagine an end that involved more than survival. They made a plan like surgeons prepping for a risky operation. Naomi would publish the photos with a frame of testimony, every timestamp, every metadata point, every backup she could recover, while Min-ho worked from the inside. He would hand over ledgers, recordings, and names his uncle had trusted him to protect. They argued about the wording for hours, because both of them understood how easy it would be to make the story into a weapon instead of a truth. "This could bring down his whole network," Naomi said, eyes raw from staring at screens. "It'll expose who in the police took bribes. It'll show how deep the corruption goes. And it will also paint a target on your back again," Min-ho said softly. "Are you ready for that?" She looked at him. This man who had once locked her in a room for her own safety, who had carried her through smoke and bullets to kiss the life back into her. "I'm ready," she said. "If we do this, we do it together." They leaked to a trusted prosecutor in Tokyo with international jurisdiction and arranged for an embargoed release timed with arrests. Min-ho's cooperation meant prosecutors could move fast. Search warrants, arrests, sealed indictments. Naomi's exposé ran with her voice overlaid on city footage, clear, steady, unflinching. She read the names of the dead. She showed the faces. She exposed the trail of payments, the phone calls, the dinners where decisions had been made. When the takedown began, it was both quieter and more violent than either of them expected. Police seized properties in the early hours. Dae-sung's men were taken in cuffs while he sat at a private dinner and watched, his face a neutral mask cracking only once. The Jade Serpents splintered. Some leaders fled the country, others were arrested. Revelations about collusion in the Seoul police sent shockwaves through precincts and ministry offices. News channels ran Naomi's photos on repeat. When the first arrests hit the air, Min-ho turned to Naomi. "You did this." "We did this," she corrected. "You gave them what they needed." He smiled, a small, flat thing, edged with grief. "You'll get hate mail, death threats. You'll be called a traitor." "So will you," she said. "We knew that." He took her hand, thumbed the inside of her wrist like someone finding a familiar map. "No regrets?" She looked at him, the man who had once been her captor by circumstance, and then became her savior by choice. "Not a single one." The press conference should have been controlled, carefully staged, lawyers present, security everywhere. Instead, it felt like a living thing the moment cameras found Naomi. Reporters pressed forward, Questions ricocheted, and everyone wanted a line to clip. She felt Min-ho's hand on the small of her back. A tether. When the prosecutor finished and the feeds were rolling, Naomi stepped forward to read a short statement. "This story is for the people who do not have a voice," she said, voice steady. She read the names. She closed her laptop. Then a commotion at the edge of the crowd. Min-ho, supposed to be in protective custody, had walked up the plaza. He pushed past a security detail that parted like a sea, his movements precise and unannounced. He stopped in front of Naomi. For one electric second, the cameras and the noise became background static. "I'm supposed to be hiding," he said, raw and honest. "Building a new life away from all this." Naomi turned, breathless. "Min-ho?" "But I realized something," he said, voice louder, carrying. "I don't want a new life if you're not in it." Then, in front of every lens and every microphone, he kissed her. It was not the private surrender of the safe house. It was a claim, a promise, a public unmasking of a love that had no interest in silences. The crowd erupted. Phones rose. The clip went viral within minutes. After the takedown, the world made its noise. Some called Min-ho a traitor. Others, a man who finally chose what was right over family. He turned over assets, named names, walked prosecutors through ledgers that made Parliament shudder. He took responsibility for the crimes he'd committed and cooperated fully. The sentence was inevitable, 18 months for lesser charges and for his cooperation. But it was also a bargain to keep worse men from walking free. Naomi won awards for the exposé. The International Journalism Award Committee praised her courage. The footage and the testimony were cited as exemplary investigative work. The prize was a small thing compared to lives saved and the rot exposed, but she accepted it with Min-ho's name on her lips in countless speeches. While he served his time, they built a life in letters. He wrote like a man, discovering his softness in ink, long pages that surprised her, with the poetry tucked between strategy and regret. He sent small sketches, a pressed jasmine petal, a list of books to read in the quiet. Naomi visited every week without fail, 3 trains and a city between them, a routine that became ritual. She learned his quirks on paper, the way he arranged sentences to hide vulnerability, the careful humor he used to break tension. He learned the angles of her face from the anecdotes she left in envelopes he treasured. When he was released, the world had shifted slower than either of them. He worked with a consultancy that helped companies secure legitimate operations, security consulting born of a man who'd once lived in the shadows. They moved into a small apartment together, tangible proof they could exist in daylight. 2 years after the press conference, Naomi held a gallery opening, photographs from Seoul stitched into a narrative of ruin and redemption. Min-ho came in a sharp suit, the whole room watching them like they were the last scene of a long play. She had framed the shot of the penthouse balcony at night. Strings of lights looked like a river of stars. She was halfway through a conversation when he slipped away. Later, after the crowd thinned and the clink of wine glasses slowed, Min-ho found her standing alone in front of that photograph. He slipped a small box from his pocket and found a shadow that made her breathe differently. "I remember when you took this," he said quietly. "Week 2, she replied. "I couldn't sleep. You found me on the balcony at 3 a.m. You said the city looked like it was full of possibilities. I was wrong," she said, smiling, and then she looked at him. "It was full of you." He got down on one knee in the middle of the gallery, light pooling like judgment and grace. The ring was simple, elegant, with a black diamond set in white gold, unexpected and perfect. "I was a criminal when we met. You were my captive. Nothing about us makes sense, he said, voice steady and small. But you saw something in me worth saving. You chose me when you had every reason to run. Naomi Reed, will you marry me? She laughed, tears leaking over the rims of her lids. You know my parents are going to have a heart attack. Is that a yes? He asked, grin crooked and unrepentant. You're asking me to marry a reformed crime boss? She said, pretending indignation. I'm asking you to marry the man who loves you more than anything in this world, he said simply. The rest is just details. She stepped forward, grabbed his hands and pulled him up. She kissed him, soft, fierce, and slid the ring onto her finger. No regrets? He asked when they broke the kiss, eyes wet and laughing. Not a single one, she said, then kissed him again. Outside, Seoul kept glittering, indifferent and magnificent. Inside, two people who had survived explosions, betrayals, and the grinding machinery of criminal power stood in front of photographs and promised a future. If you enjoyed Naomi and Min-ho's dangerous, messy love, smash that like button, subscribe for the full scripted story series, and share this video with someone who loves romantic thrillers. Tell me in the comments, which moment made you fall for them? Was it the first kiss, the rescue, or the press conference kiss? Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Your support keeps these stories alive.